Okay, today I'm going to make some French bread, and we're going to start with 500 grams of warmish water. And then we've got two mixtures. We've got leaven, which we make with a starter, and poolish, which we make with yeast. So there are a couple different, that's why we use less water. It's going to end up being a much firmer dough. I'm going to put the leaven in first. And we want 400 grams of leaven. So we used 200 grams of flour and 220 grams of flour and 220 grams of water for this. So it's going to be, let's see, that's 500, that's 200, I need to get to 900 grams. This is, it's not exact, so we're just a little bit over. And then we need 400 grams of the leaven, and that's going to be virtually all of it because I just used a little bit extra just so, because some stick to the side, but it's going to be, you put 200 grams of water, 200 grams of flour, and 3 grams of dry yeast. And so it's going to be virtually all of this to 400 grams of the poolish. And again, you know it's ready when it's floating, but I make both of these ahead of time. The poolish you put in the fridge because if you didn't, it'd be like it'd blow up. But put it in the fridge overnight, it'll be ready in the morning. And there's 400 and a bit. Okay. So this is good. We can mix it up a little bit. The poolish is a lot more cohesive. It doesn't break up very well, so it's sort of all sticky together. So we'll mix it up a little bit, and then we need 650 grams of all-purpose flour. That's 650, and we need 350 to equal 1,000 of bread flour. Whoops, of bread flour. So that's going to be just about all my bread flour. Okay, and now we're just going to mix it up like we did before with hands and just moosh it together. I'll show you after I've mooshed it all together that so I'll show that to you afterwards. It's going to be a lot firmer. Okay, I've mostly squished it together. I'm using my spatula thingy to scrape the flour off the sides, and then I'll squish it together some more. This is a lot more to incorporate everything than the country loaf because it's a lot firmer, and your hands will get tired, and your mind will get tired. But it's really important to work it all through, otherwise you get sort of bits in there. So you see it's a lot firmer than the country loaf, and I'm just turning it, scraping and getting everything incorporated. I'll let it rest for half an hour, and then I'm going to add the salt and a little water. Now the recipe says add the salt at the first turn. I don't do that because it doesn't feel like it gets fully incorporated. And I add water because I think it helps get everything gunked up or integrated. The recipe doesn't call for that extra 50 grams. I think that might have been an oversight in the recipe writing. I don't know. Okay, so half an hour, I'll come back. Okay, it's been about half an hour, and we're gonna put, the recipe calls for 24 grams of salt. I put in 30 grams because I think it needs a little bit more salt, but you do that to taste. Put in 50 grams of water and swoosh. And I like putting water in now. The recipe doesn't call for it, but it does in other of the recipes, so I figure, well, let's go ahead and do it. It doesn't seem to hurt the bread at all, and it does help work through any sort of chunks of flour that might be left unintegrated. So let me squish this all together, and you see oops, yeah, you see it's it's breaking apart, and it'll continue to break apart until all the water's integrated. So we'll come back after that's done. Okay, you see that it's all, the water has been integrated, so I just kind of, this is no knead bread, ends up being kneaded some. And then we'll put it in this bowl here. As you see, it's not a glass bowl, but it's all right. You'll see how, I don't know, it's hard to see. Where is it? There it is. It's about half full. At the end of 4 hours, it's going to have, break the top. So every 40 minutes for this bread, we'll do a turn. So I'll show you the first turn. After that, I'll just let it go till the end. We're ready to form the loaves. Okay, every 40 minutes for about 4 hours. Okay, this is the first turn. It's about, well, it's 9:20, so it's been in for 40 minutes. Put it in the oven with the light on. Wet the hand to prevent sticking. And 1, 2, 3, 4. And back it goes. Okay, you see that it's risen probably to almost double its size. It's puffy. You can see some like bubbles there, and it's still, firm, a firm dough. Now the next step is to get it, as firmly but gently onto your work surface. And we're going to, okay, you want to do it as gently, but you got to be a little firm with it too. Okay, so there's, oops. I'm going to cut off my head so you can see the work. Okay, so it's right there. I've got a little space worked out here, so I've got another piece, another workspace here. So the next job is to cut it. So you see how much firmer it is than the other dough. First, just a coating of flour, and you got to decide how big you want your loaves to be. The recipe says cut it in 2 and make 2 loaves. That's going to make bread about the size of my thighs. So I tend to cut it into 6 loaves because I could do 6, I could do 5. I like to cook it in one go because it's kind of complicated, as I'll show you. So rather than make 8, so what I try to do is make it 5 or 6. So I'm going to cut some here. That'll make 1 loaf. And then I'm just putting it over here. You want to make it as rectangular as you can. See, there's that one. make it as rectangular as you can. That's why I cut off the ends. That's going to make a fairly big loaf. So now I've got this middle piece, as you see, and I think I'll cut this in 4. Like I'll cut it in half and then quarter. They're not going to be all perfect in the same size, but I also don't want them too big so they don't fit in the bread forms. So here you got ended up with 6. They're actually all relatively the same size, so that's probably the most successful I've been in terms of making them even. But the next step is just to let them rest for about 20 minutes, and then we'll form them into loaves and put them in the bread forms. And I'll show you another way that I have done it with, not with bread forms, but it's a little bit more problematic. So, okay, see you in a half an hour, 20 minutes.